Hi, this is Brian with ActiveMelody.com. If you haven't subscribed to the Active Melody YouTube channel yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button and also the alert bell so that you can be notified in real time when I put out new lessons, which I do every week. So in this week's lesson, we're going to break down a really cool slow blues. It's easy to play and it's played in the key of C. There's no open strings that are used in this. That's a huge advantage to you because you can transpose this easily into any key that you want to play it in. So all these licks you're going to learn in C will work in any key, and I'll show you how to do that as we break down the lesson. So I'm going to break down everything note for note and explain where it all comes from so that you understand the why behind it. You're not just memorizing something, but you're actually understanding why it works, and that's really the key to learning how to play. The other cool thing about this is it's a standalone composition, works on an acoustic or electric guitar, but you have a little piece that you can play for other people. So keep that in mind as you're learning it. You're kind of learning something, but you also have something that you can perform for other people. So if you want to learn how to play this, I've got the lesson split into two parts. In this video, we'll take a look at the first half. If you'd like to watch the second half and get the tablature and access the on-screen tab viewer, which is a great way to learn, you can get all of that by going to ActiveMelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP262. Alright, so we're going to be learning how to play this in the key of C, but I will show you how to transpose this and play this in any key. It's very simple to do. And it'll make sense as I explain this setup here. So the first thing that I like to do is when I'm playing anything, whether I'm playing with a full band or playing a standalone composition like this, is I think about a home base. And I always say this in just about every video, and it's so important, I can't stress it enough, that if you're learning to improvise, you have to connect everything back to something. They're not just free-floating notes out there. They have to live somewhere. And so the neighborhood that we're going to be playing within, for me, is 99 times out of 100 when I start a lead, I'm always thinking about that major bar chord using the E chord shape. So in this case, we're not going to be playing the chord, but I just think about it. I visualize it. In my mind, I go ahead and see this 8th fret as my root fret. So to play the C major, since we're playing the key of C, the C major bar chord, we're going to bar the 8th fret, and then these three fingers make up the E chord shape. So if you think of an E chord in first position, you can take that chord shape, slide it up, capo with your finger on the 8th fret, and recreate, just like a capo would, recreate that E chord up here. Now you're playing a C chord. And that's all the caged system is. I always have questions about that, and a lot of people are always confused about it. It's super simple. Caged is just taking those chords we learned those in first position, those cowboy chords, the ones we start off with, and how you can reposition those chords in different, and reuse them in different places on the neck using bars with your finger and that kind of thing. That's all caged is. So we're going to start then by visualizing that C chord. The first thing that I played, however, was the 5 chord. Now I want you to think about this and look at the 5 chord. So this chord, that's a G7 chord. It's a G dominant 7 chord. But look at how that chord lives within your 1 chord. So don't even think C at this point. Just think 1 chord, 5 chord. And the reason you don't want to think about the key is because you could repurpose this and use it anywhere, right? Depending on what key you're playing in. So you got your ring finger then in your 1 chord, and look at that. It stays in the same place. There it is. Whether you're playing this chord or this chord. You got your 1, your 5. You can take that 5 and slide it down to and play a 4 chord. Now you've got your 1, 4, and 5 that you can do anywhere on the neck. So think about that for a minute, and maybe you already knew that, but if you don't, that's a huge takeaway, just to know that your 1, 4, and 5 are all right there, and you can do that anywhere in the neck, and it's fairly easy to play. So I start with the 5 chord, and all I'm doing is playing strings 5, 4, and 3, and I'm giving it some vibrato. And to finger those notes, I've got my ring finger on the 10th fret, 5th string, my middle finger's on the 9th fret, 4th string, my pinky is on the 10th fret, 3rd string. We're only playing strings 5, 4, and 3. And actually the way that I did it with my fingers is I used these 3 fingers. I put my middle finger, index finger, and ring finger. And the reason for that was it makes the vibrato easier. That's a technique that I learned from Robert Cray, studying him and how he does that. And I think he's the best at that, at playing like a vibrato over a chord. It took me a long time to do that, so don't think that that's an easy thing to do. You can use your tremolo if you've got that on your guitar, or just play the notes. So that's the first thing. Then I went right into those notes. Now let me show you how to play them, and then I'll explain where they come from. It's all going to make sense here. So I'm starting on the 10th fret 5th string, and then I'm coming up here to the 7th fret 4th string, 10th fret 4th string. So, and now we're going to bar the first 3 strings on the 8th fret. There's that 8th fret. Remember, that's the root fret. So that's starting to make sense as to why you might bar those 3 strings, right? But we're going to play strings 2 and 3, and then I'm going to hammer onto the 9th fret 3rd string. And then while those notes are ringing out, my ring finger goes down on the 10th fret 4th string to play that note. And if you look at what I just made there, I just made a C chord, the top part of your C major bar chord. So when we're backing up now, we have... Now I know a lot of you know how to play that minor pentatonic scale. That's kind of one of the first scales that most of us learn. So there's 5 different patterns in the minor pentatonic scale, and I go through all 5 patterns in the Blues Lead course, which you have access to as a premium member. But the way that pattern 1 looks for the key of C, it looks like that. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I'll just cover it real quickly. If you take that same pattern, same shape, and you slide it down 1, 2, 3 frets this way, in this direction, play the same thing, same distance between the notes, and you're now playing the major pentatonic scale for C. Doing the same thing. So, when I played this first note, it's in the minor pentatonic scale, but this second note, you're going to notice, is not in the minor pentatonic scale, and that's because it's in the major pentatonic scale, pattern 1. So look at this. There's that note. That's why those 2 notes work together, even though they're not technically in that same in the same pentatonic scale. That's why they flow together. So hopefully you start to understand that correlation between the minor pentatonic scale and the major pentatonic scale. And one little exercise that you can try that can really help your ear understand it and your mind is if you play the C chord, the root chord, and then you walk up the major pentatonic scale. So watch this. Just walk up a few notes of it. Hear that? It sounds very kind of happy, positive. Now I'm going to walk up those same notes in the minor. Hear the difference between the 2. And I was playing the same shape in both places, just one was in the major, one was in the minor. So start to play around with little licks, you know. There's your major, right? Hear the difference? Okay, playing the same thing in both places. Alright, so let's back up from the beginning. We have that, and then we have... Then I did this upstroke, and I played a C6 chord. Now I'm keeping that that chord shape, the top 4 strings out of the C major chord that I just showed you, but I'm just introducing my pinky now to the 10th fret 2nd string. And that's what gives you that C6 sound, a little jazzier sounding. Right? Okay, now after that I went... Let me show you how to play that. I've got my ring finger on the 11th fret 1st string. That's in pattern 1 of the minor pentatonic scale. But then my middle finger is on the 10th fret 2nd string. That note is not in the minor pentatonic scale, but it is back in that major pentatonic scale. It's just in pattern 2 of the major pentatonic scale. And this is an awesome lick that uses a note in each of those 2 scales, and that's why it has kind of a clash sound to me. But you don't have to think about any of that. Just anchor that lick back to this chord shape so that you could use that in any key. If you're playing in the key of G, you can start to see how these licks connect back to the chord shape, which is the key of the song that you're playing in. Right? And then we're going to go back to the 8th fret, and we're going to bar the first 2 strings. Now I've got my ring finger barring the first 3 strings on the 10th fret. I'm playing strings 2 and 3. That's just the minor pentatonic scale. And then we're going to do that hammer on again between the 8th fret and the 9th fret, this time on the 3rd string, yeah. And then do an upstroke on the 8th fret 2nd string. So we have... So just look at all of that as a lick. That's it. That's how you have to think about this. Don't get caught up in the notes. Don't get caught up in anything. But look at that as a lick that you can play. You can use that in anything. And that's what this is to me. That's how you learn how to play the guitar, is just learning licks like that, little chunks. They're not big, huge solos, just little parts of it. You're learning words, and then you can start to put those words together and start to be more articulate as you learn more words, fancier licks. Okay, so now we've set it up. We're going to use the same cadence now for the rest of this first half. We're going to go right back to that call lick. So think of this as a call and response. So the call. And then I went different response lick. So the first response lick was, the second one goes. Let me show you that and show you how to think about it. Very simple. I've already covered this. In that we're going to now be going to the major pentatonic scale, pattern 1. So it starts with right there in pattern 1. So my ring finger is on the 5th fret 4th string, sliding up to the 7th fret, then the 5th fret 3rd string, then the 7th fret 3rd string. And then I'm going to play this. Now look at what I did. I went from pattern 1 to pattern 2 of the major pentatonic scale. Still sounds kind of happy. That's a harmonized third that we're doing. So I've got my ring finger on the 9th fret 3rd string, and I've got my middle finger on the 8th fret 2nd string. So now we're going to slide that up 3 frets, 1, 2, 3. And listen to how it switched to a bluesier sound. This might be a big aha moment for you. If you realize what I just did there, was we went from the major, which is happy sounding, more positive, to there's that 3 fret thing. Now this time I'm going this way, but we're switching from the major back to the minor, so we're going the opposite way. You can see I've taken that same shape and just sliding it up. Now at this point my ring finger is on the 12th fret 3rd string, but it gave it more of a bluesy sound, and that's just because we went from major pentatonic to minor pentatonic. All right, so let's back up from the beginning. We have the second time through, everything is the same. That's the same. But that sounds different, and that's because now we're not playing that major, which is the 1 chord. Now we're doing the minor version of that. So I'm playing strings 2 and 3 out of the 8th fret. I'm just not doing the hammer on to the 9th fret 3rd string. That's the only difference. Everything else is the same. Ring finger goes back down on the 10th fret 4th string. And these two notes, why do they work? If you think about your 4 chord, I'm just playing the 2 notes out of that 4 chord. So, and then I came back to that 7th fret 4th string to reiterate that note. And then I played. So that's the response. So that's minor pentatonic scale, pattern 1. We're going to start right there on the 10th fret 3rd string. I'm going to do a full bend. And then I use my ring finger to pluck the 1st string. By the way, I'm barring the first 2 strings on the 8th fret there. I just keep that down the whole time. You could use your pick for that, either way. There's a bend, playing the note without the bend, 10th fret 3rd string. And then that last note is the 8th fret 3rd string. So all together that response lick, and then back to the 1 chord. And then I went. That's walking right up that pretty much everything we've already played. So it's starting back here on the 10th fret 5th string. We're going back up to the 7th fret 4th string, 10th fret 4th string. There's your hammer on between the 8th fret and the 9th fret on the 3rd string. And then we're going to play the 8th fret 2nd string. And then there's the 10th fret 2nd string. So that's pattern 2 of the major pentatonic scale. That last note is the 8th fret first string. So all together. And that's a great takeaway lick because you're really tracing all those chord tones. Sounds really good on its own. And then we go to the 5 chord in the song and I went. So let me show you that. There's 2 notes that we're going to target here, and they're both G notes because the 5 chord is a G chord. It's this note, which is a G note, and then that note, which is a G note. They're an octave apart. They're both G's though. And there's a couple of ways you can think about this note instead of even having to memorize the fact that it's a G note, is to think about its position either in the chord, you know, it's that note that lives within the bar chord, or it's in that minor pentatonic scale in that position, or it's in the major pentatonic scale in that position. It just depends on how you want to think about it. But just remember, if you're wanting to play the note that is your 5 chord, it's going to be that note and then it's going to be that note. And those are also the same 2 notes. This is another way to think about it, that are in the 5 chord, right? So you've got that note and that note in the chord. So if that helps, you can just target them that way. So from the start of that lick, we went. So that's a half bend. I'm starting it on the 10th fret, 2nd string, doing a half bend, just bending 1 fret from where we start. Bend and release. Play that note that's in the 5 chord. And then we come down to the 10th fret, 3rd string, do a hammer-on between the 8th fret and the 9th fret on the 3rd string. There's the 10th fret, 4th string, and then my middle finger comes down and plays the 10th fret, 5th string. So all together we have. So just remember this lick when you're playing blues. That's a great little takeaway lick. Even if you learn nothing else in this entire thing, you can use that anytime you're playing around the 5 chord in a blues. So if you're playing in G, it sounds really good. And you can play it slow or fast or introduce some other notes to it. Alright, so let me back up from the 4 chord and I'll play us up to where we are. So we have. And then, let's learn that. So to play that, my ring finger goes from the 10th fret to the 12th fret on the 5th string, and then I go ahead and bar the first 4 strings on the 10th fret and play strings 4 and 3. And what that is that's the F chord. If you think of your F chord, this is using the C chord shape. You can play it like this, or you can play it like this, right? Either way, same 3 notes there, you're just changing the bass note. And I've covered this in other lessons. And that's what I'm doing. I'm going from the 5 chord to the 4 chord, back to the 1 chord. I'm just dancing around those chords with these licks that we're filling in. So then after that, I go back to the minor pentatonic scale pattern 1, 8th fret 3rd string. And then there's the 10th fret 4th string. And then I do a quick slide from the 10th fret 5th string down to the 8th fret 5th string. All the way down to the 6th fret 5th string. So we have. And then that last note is the 8th fret 6th string. Now these notes right here are a little extension of that minor pentatonic scale pattern 1. Now I cover this when you go over pattern 1 in that blues lead course. I cover, you got your minor pentatonic scale that most people show you how to play. But then there's this little extension. It's a little box. It's very easy to find. It's just these 2 notes. They're 2 frets apart. Those are the notes that you play with that extension. Just play around with that. It's the same notes that are already in the scale. It's just a different place to play them. And I always find myself going down to this. And that's exactly what I did here. Okay, so we ended on that note. And then to conclude this, I went. So that's a slide from the 8th fret 4th string, sliding up to the 10th fret, back to the 8th fret, 10th fret 5th string, 8th fret 5th string. So you can see another little box here. So we have all the way back down to the 6th fret 5th string. And now we're going to repeat those notes. So that's going to be the 8th fret 4th string, sliding up to the 10th fret 4th string, back to the 8th fret 4th string, and then that last note there, notice I'm using my ring finger for that. That's the 10th fret 5th string, so that after I play that, I can play the 5 chord, which is where it would fall. And that ring finger is in the 5 chord, so it makes it easy just to put your other fingers in position. That's the first half. There's a lot of notes there, but it's fairly simple to play, very slow, and you can set your tempo and play this however fast you're comfortable with it. But instead of just memorizing the notes, even if you don't get them all, hopefully you've connected a few dots here. Even if you've only connected one, that's progress. So just keep that in mind. I know sometimes people get frustrated. I memorize these things and I forget them. But you don't. Some of it will stick. Not all of it, but some of it will. And that's how we all learn. It's just by doing over and over again. But then if you want to take everything that you've learned here and play it in a different key, just remember, if that's your home bass, you want to play this in A, just make your home bass there. I'm making an A chord. And you can see where my ring finger is, just like I showed you in the beginning. You can do the whole thing in any key you want now. And you can take any of these licks and play them in any key. All right, let me back up and play through it one more time, and then I'll see you in part 2 for the second half.